The air in Golden Harvest Market was a delicate blend of fresh herbs and ambition, a scent that clung to the walnut shelves and marble floors like a signature perfume. Tucked in San Francisco's Pacific Heights, the supermarket was a shrine to excess, its aisles lined with $50 olive oils, truffle-infused honeys, and organic avocados priced like small luxuries. Under the soft glow of recessed lights, cashiers and stockers moved with practiced grace, their green aprons a uniform of service in a world where wealth was currency and status was king. It was a Wednesday afternoon in October 2023, and the store hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Its clientele, tech moguls, trust fund heiresses, and corporate wives, expecting nothing less than perfection. Emma Prescott, 28, stood at register 3. Her hands a blur as she scanned a customer's basket of heirloom tomatoes and kombucha. Her blonde hair was pulled into a neat bun, her green eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, her Golden Harvest apron crisp despite the 5-hour shift. A graduate student in sociology at UC Berkeley, Emma worked part-time to cover living expenses, a choice rooted in her need for independence. Her husband, Edward Prescott, 35, was the CEO of Nextlify, a rising AI startup in Silicon Valley. But Emma kept that fact locked away, a secret she guarded to be judged for her work, not her last name. Raised in a working-class family in Oakland, she'd learned early that respect was earned through effort, not entitlement, and she wore her cashier's role like a badge of pride, a testament to her roots. Today, though, her pride was under siege. The line at her register stretched 6 deep, a mix of impatient regulars and harried professionals, their carts brimming with overpriced groceries. Emma's fingers danced over the scanner, her smile a polished shield, but her pulse quickened as she noticed the woman at the front of the line. Vivian Caldwell, a 50-year-old regular whose Hermes bag and tailored Chanel blazer screamed old money. Vivian's platinum blonde hair was swept into a chignon, her sapphire earrings catching the light as she tapped her manicured nails on the counter, her impatience a palpable force that seemed to radiate from her like heat. Emma scanned a jar of organic almond butter, her voice steady despite the weight of Vivian's gaze. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she said, her tone warm but professional. "Did you find everything you needed today?" Vivian barely glanced up from her phone, her lips pursed in a thin line. "Just hurry up," she said, her voice clipped, sharp enough to cut glass. "I don't have all day to stand here." Emma nodded, unfazed. She'd dealt with Vivian before, snippy comments about slow service, eye rolls when Emma double-checked an item, the occasional jab about the store's incompetent staff. It was par for the course in Pacific Heights, where customers wielded their wealth like a weapon, but Emma kept her cool, scanning a bottle of Bordeaux and a slab of Wagyu beef, her movements precise. The total ticked upward on the screen, $128.47 so far, with half the basket still to go. Then it happened. As Emma scanned a $200 bottle of Chateau Margaux, the barcode scanner beeped angrily, flashing an error code. She tried again, slower this time, but the machine refused to cooperate, a glitch that happened maybe once a week, but always at the worst moment. Emma's stomach tightened, but she kept her smile, her voice calm. "I'm sorry, ma'am, the scanner's acting up. I'll enter the code manually. It'll just take a second." Vivian's head snapped up, her blue eyes narrowing to slits. "A second," she said, her voice rising, loud enough to draw glances from the line behind her. "Do you not know how to do your job? I'm paying good money to shop here, not to wait while you fumble like an amateur." Emma's cheeks flushed, but she kept her composure, her fingers moving to the keypad to enter the wine's code. "I understand, ma'am," she said, her tone measured. "The system's having a glitch, but I'm fixing it now." Vivian let out a theatrical sigh, her nails drumming faster, each tap a small explosion of disdain. "Fixing it?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "People like you are why places like this go downhill. Honestly, if you can't handle a simple scanner, what are you even doing here? Call your manager, now." The words hit like a slap, sharp and public, echoing in the quiet hum of the store. The customers behind Vivian shifted, some whispering, others staring, their curiosity a weight on Emma's shoulders. Jenny, the cashier at Register 4, shot her a sympathetic glance, but no one spoke up. Emma's heart pounded, but she forced herself to focus, entering the code with deliberate care. "I'll have this sorted in a moment, ma'am," she said, her voice steady despite the sting. "There's no need for the manager." "No need," Vivian said, her laugh cold and cutting. "You're wasting my time, girl. Do you know who I am? I don't stand in line to be served by someone who can't even do a basic job. Get me someone competent." Emma's fingers paused, just for a second, the insult sinking deeper than she'd expected. She'd heard worse. Customers who snapped at her for bagging their groceries wrong, others who muttered about lazy workers. But Vivian's cruelty was deliberate, a performance designed to humiliate, to assert her superiority in front of the crowd. Emma swallowed the urge to snap back, to tell Vivian she was a grad student with a 4.0 GPA, that her husband could buy this entire store if he wanted. Instead, she finished entering the code, the scanner finally beeping in approval. "I've got it now, ma'am," she said, her smile tight. "Let me finish your order." Vivian rolled her eyes, tossing her phone into her Hermes bag with a flourish. "Unbelievable," she muttered, loud enough for the line to hear. "This is what I get for shopping where they hire just anyone." The transaction continued, but the air was thick with tension. Vivian's disdain a cloud that lingered over the register. Emma scanned the remaining items. A wheel of imported brie, a tin of caviar, a bundle of organic asparagus, her hands steady but her jaw clenched. The total climbed to $623.19, a sum that could cover Emma's rent for half a month. Vivian swiped her black Amex card, her movements sharp, as if the act itself was an inconvenience. When Emma handed her the receipt, Vivian snatched it without a word, her sapphire earrings glinting as she turned to leave. Then, as if scripted for maximum impact, Vivian paused, letting a small box of truffle salt slip from her hand to the floor. It landed with a soft thud, rolling under the counter. She looked at Emma, her lips curling into a smirk. "Pick it up, girl," she said, her voice low but deliberate, each word a blade. "Don't make me wait any longer, or do I need to teach you how to do that too?" The store seemed to hold its breath, the line behind Vivian frozen, the whispers growing louder. Emma's face burned, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears, but she knelt, her fingers brushing the cold marble as she retrieved the box. She stood, placing it in Vivian's bag, her smile a fragile mask. "Here you go, ma'am," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Vivian's smirk widened, a victor savoring her triumph. "That's better," she said, turning on her heel, her Chanel blazer swishing as she strode toward the exit, her Hermes bag swinging like a trophy. The customers behind her moved forward, some avoiding Emma's gaze, others muttering about rude people. But the moment was over, the spotlight gone. Emma stood at her register, the receipt trembling in her hand, the weight of Vivian's words pressing down like a physical force. She'd been humiliated, reduced to a prop in Vivian's performance of power, and the sting was sharper than she'd expected. Jenny leaned over from Register 4, her voice low. "You okay, Emma? That woman's a nightmare. I'd have lost it." Emma forced a nod, her throat tight. "I'm fine," she lied, scanning the next customer's items, her hands moving on autopilot. But she wasn't fine. Vivian's contempt had cut deeper than she'd anticipated, stirring memories of her childhood, of teachers who assumed she'd never make it out of Oakland, of classmates who mocked her thrift store clothes. She'd worked hard to prove them wrong, to build a life on her terms, but moments like this made her feel small, invisible, as if her worth was tied to a scanner that wouldn't cooperate. In the break room, 15 minutes later, Emma sank onto a plastic chair, her apron crumpled in her lap. David, the store manager, a 40-year-old with a receding hairline and a pragmatic streak, found her there. "I heard what happened," he said, leaning against the doorway. "Vivian Caldwell's a regular, and she's always a piece of work. I'll report it to corporate, but you know how it is. She's married to some big-shot real estate guy. They don't like upsetting her kind." Emma nodded, the words barely registering. "I get it," she said, her voice flat. "Just another day, right?" David hesitated, his expression softening. You did good out there, keeping your cool. Most people would have snapped. You're one of my best, Emma. Thanks, she said, but the praise felt hollow, a bandage on a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. As David left, Emma pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over Edward's contact. She wanted to tell him, to spill the anger and hurt, but she stopped herself. Edward would be furious, would probably want to confront Vivian or buy the damn store just to fire her as a customer. But that wasn't what Emma needed. She needed to handle this herself, to prove she was more than the girl Vivian saw. But how? The answer came unexpectedly, in the form of a man who'd been standing behind Vivian in line. Marcus Lee, 45, was a regular at Golden Harvest, a quiet figure in jeans and a faded flannel shirt who always tipped the baggers and thanked the cashiers by name. Emma barely noticed him that day, too consumed by Vivian's venom, but Marcus had noticed her. A documentary filmmaker with a Pulitzer-nominated project on income inequality, he'd been gathering footage for his latest film, a deep dive into the microaggressions of wealth in everyday spaces. When Vivian unleashed her tirade, Marcus had pulled out his phone, discreetly recording the entire exchange, the scanner glitch, the insults, the truffle salt on the floor, Emma's quiet resilience. That evening, as Emma rode the bus home to her modest apartment in the Mission District, Marcus uploaded the video to Twitter and Instagram, a 90-second clip that captured Vivian's cruelty in stark clarity. "This is how the elite treat those who serve them," he wrote in the caption. "This woman, dripping in designer labels, thinks money buys the right to humiliate a hardworking cashier. We need to call this out. Respect workers." He didn't name Vivian, but the details, Hermes bag, Pacific Heights, the mention of her important connections, were enough for the internet to start connecting dots. By morning, the video had gone viral, racking up 200,000 views and thousands of retweets. Reddit's Arse Tales from Retail exploded with threads about the Hermes Karen, users sharing their own stories of entitled customers, their outrage a chorus that echoed across platforms. "This is why I hate rich people." One commenter wrote, "They think they're gods because they can afford fancy cheese." Another, a cashier from Seattle, added, "I've had customers like this. Props to that cashier for not throwing the scanner at her." The hashtag #RespectWorkers began to trend, a rallying cry for service workers from baristas to valets, their voices amplified by Marcus's clip. Emma woke to a flood of notifications, her phone buzzing like an angry beehive. A friend from Berkeley had texted her the link, followed by a string of shocked emojis. "Is this you?" the message read. Emma clicked the video, her stomach lurching as she watched herself on screen. Kneeling to pick up the truffle salt, her face a mask of forced calm as Vivian's voice cut through the air. She felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely empowered. The comments, hundreds of them, were overwhelmingly supportive, strangers calling her a queen and a badass for holding her ground. Someone had even started a Venmo fund, tips for the cashier, sending her $50 with a note, "You didn't deserve that. Keep shining." At Golden Harvest, the mood was electric. Jenny greeted Emma with a hug, whispering, "You're famous." David pulled her aside, his expression a mix of pride and nerves. "Corporate's freaking out," he said. "They know it's Vivian Caldwell and her husband's some real estate hotshot. But the video's putting pressure on us to do something. You okay with all this?" Emma nodded, though her mind was reeling. "I didn't ask for it," she said, "but I'm not sorry it's out there." She crossed a line. David smiled, a rare crack in his pragmatic facade. "You're tougher than you look, Prescott. Just don't let it go to your head." As the day wore on, Emma felt the weight of eyes, co-workers, customers, even strangers who seemed to recognize her from the video. She scanned groceries with her usual efficiency, but her thoughts were elsewhere, circling the question of what came next. She hadn't told Edward yet, dreading his reaction. He'd always supported her choice to work at the market, admiring her independence, but he was fiercely protective. And this was personal. She needed to handle it herself, but the viral video was spiraling beyond her control, a wave she couldn't outrun. The second twist came 2 days later, when the story took a turn Emma hadn't anticipated. Edward Prescott, her husband, was in Palo Alto, preparing for a critical Series C funding round for Nexlify, a $200 million deal that could propel his AI startup into the stratosphere. He'd been blissfully unaware of the video, buried in investor meetings, until a colleague forwarded it with a terse note. "This is your wife, right? Heads up. This is blowing up." Edward watched the clip, his jaw tightening with each of Vivian's insults. His anger tempered only by pride in Emma's composure. He called her immediately, his voice a mix of concern and fury. "Why didn't you tell me?" he said, pacing his office. "That woman had no right to treat you like that. I know her husband, Emma, Gerald Caldwell. He's invested in half the Bay Area, including a stake in Nexlify. This is a mess." Emma, at home in their modest Mission District apartment, sighed into the phone. "I didn't want you to fight my battles, Edward," she said, her voice firm. "I wanted to handle it myself, but now it's out there, and I don't know what to do." Edward paused, his tone softening. "You handled it better than anyone could. But this isn't just about you anymore. It's hitting my world, too. Investors are asking questions, and Gerald's already called, whining about his wife's bad day. We need to address this together." The fallout was swift. The video, now at 1 million views, had sparked a firestorm, with news outlets like the San Francisco Chronicle and BuzzFeed picking up the story. "Hermes Karen humiliates cashier in viral video," screamed one headline, while another asked, "Who is the Pacific Heights elite bullying workers?" Reddit sleuths identified Vivian as the wife of Gerald Caldwell, a real estate magnate whose portfolio included half of downtown San Francisco. The backlash was relentless, with #respect workers trending alongside boycott Caldwell, users calling for protests outside his properties. Vivian's socialite circle, once a fortress of privilege, began to fracture, her invitations to galas and charity boards quietly rescinded. For Edward, the timing couldn't have been worse. Nexlify's investors, already skittish about market volatility, saw the video as a PR nightmare, especially when bloggers began linking Emma to Edward, speculating about why a CEO's wife was working as a cashier. "It's a distraction," one investor told him, his voice cold. "Your personal life is bleeding into the company. Fix it, or we walk." Edward, torn between loyalty to Emma and the pressure to save his startup, proposed a bold move. A public response that would turn the narrative in their favor, leveraging Emma's story to champion workers' rights. Emma was hesitant, wary of the spotlight. "I didn't want this to be about us," she told him, sitting at their kitchen table, a sociology textbook open in front of her. "I just wanted her to face consequences." "She will," Edward said, his hand on hers. "But you're not just a cashier, Emma. You're a voice now. Let's use it." They agreed on a plan, a press conference, modest but strategic, held at a community center in Oakland, Emma's hometown. Edward would introduce her, framing the incident as a call to action for respecting service workers. Emma would speak, sharing her story and demanding an apology from Vivian. It was a risk, exposing their marriage to scrutiny, inviting more media frenzy, but Emma saw it as a chance to reclaim her narrative, to prove she was more than the girl Vivian had mocked. The press conference, held 3 days later, was a turning point. Edward stood at the podium, his tailored suit a contrast to the community center's worn linoleum, his voice steady but passionate. "My wife, Emma Prescott, is one of the strongest people I know," he said, his eyes finding hers in the crowd. "She works at Golden Harvest Market not because she has to, but because she chooses to. Because she believes in the dignity of labor, in earning her place. What happened to her last week wasn't just an attack on her. It was an attack on every worker who's been dismissed, demeaned, or dehumanized." Emma took the stage, her hands trembling but her voice clear, her glasses catching the camera flashes. "I'm a cashier, a student, a daughter of Oakland," she said, her words echoing in the packed room. "I'm also Edward's wife, but that's not what defines me. What defines me is how I treat others, how I stand up when someone tries to tear me down. Vivian Caldwell didn't just insult me, she insulted every person who works hard to make your life easier. She owes me an apology, but more than that, she owes it to all of us to do better." The room erupted in applause, local reporters scribbling furiously, national outlets streaming the event live. The second twist, Emma's revelation as Edward's wife, landed like a thunderbolt, reshaping the narrative. Social media exploded, Emma Prescott trending alongside respect workers, users praising her poise and authenticity. "This woman's a legend," one tweet read. "CEO's wife or not, she's speaking truth." Another, from a server in Chicago, said, "Thank you, Emma. You're saying what we've all felt." The pressure on Vivian became unbearable. Her husband, Gerald, facing boycotts of his properties and a plummeting reputation, demanded she address the scandal. A week later, Vivian appeared at a hastily arranged press event, her face pale, her Chanel blazer replaced by a subdued gray dress. "I regret my behavior at Golden Harvest Market," she said, reading from a prepared statement, her voice flat. "It was a lapse in judgment, and I apologize to the cashier and anyone offended." The apology was met with skepticism, Twitter users calling it too little too late, memes of her Hermes bag flooding the platform. Vivian retreated from public life, her socialite status in tatters, her husband's business deals faltering as partners distanced themselves. For Emma, the aftermath was bittersweet. The video had given her a platform, but it had also thrust her into a spotlight she'd never sought. Customers at Golden Harvest began recognizing her, some offering kind words, others staring as if she were a celebrity. Jenny and Mike, her co-workers, dubbed her the viral queen, their teasing laced with pride. David implemented a new policy, banning abusive customers, with Vivian's name at the top of the list. "You changed things, Emma," he said, handing her a small bonus check. "Not bad for a cashier." Emma decided to leave Golden Harvest, not out of shame but because her path was shifting. The press conference had sparked something in her, a desire to use her voice, her education, to advocate for change. She poured her experience into a sociology paper, Contempt in the Checkout Line, Class and Power in Everyday Interactions, which her professor submitted to a journal, earning her a publication offer. She started a blog, chronicling the lives of service workers, its raw honesty drawing thousands of readers, publishers circling with talk of a book deal. Edward, navigating his own fallout, emerged stronger, his funding round secured after Nextlify launched a campaign supporting workers' rights, with Emma as its face. "You're my hero," he told her one night, their hands intertwined on the couch. "I thought I was the one changing the world, but it's you." Emma smiled, her heart full but grounded. "We're doing it together," she said, her voice soft but certain. "But I'm still just Emma, you know, not a CEO's wife, not a viral star. Just me." The city glittered outside their window, its lights a constellation of dreams and struggles. Emma knew the fight wasn't over. Vivian's apology was a start, but the culture of contempt ran deep, a vein of arrogance that needed dismantling. Her blog grew, her voice carried, and the waves of change she'd sparked rippled outward, fueled by a video, a hashtag, a woman who refused to be small. As she sat at her desk, drafting a new post, Emma felt a quiet power settle over her. She was no longer just a cashier, a student, a wife. She was Emma Prescott, a force of her own making, a voice for those who'd been silenced. And in the heart of San Francisco, where wealth and want collided, she knew her story was only the beginning.